next guest is iVueRobotics, and really this is one of the exciting things that I am so glad I'm able to bring to the chapter. I have put on our website or LinkedIn that if you are a company and you want to present to our chapter, please volunteer. And I know that the people that have volunteered so far have brought it, so I'm excited to see what they've got today. And honestly, Jake, you're going to have to just, I see all your equipment, I'm just not quite sure what you're going to be talking about yet.
We'll find that out, right?
Yeah, we will. So, without further ado, here's Jake.
Thank you, everyone. So, as Lamar mentioned, my name is Jacob Andrews. I started my company iVue. Originally, with a background in aviation, I started flying airplanes when I was 11 years old. So, I actually learned how to fly by instrument, right? Sitting on a couple of phone books, having a couple of pillows behind my back. Still couldn't even really see over the instrument panel. And then as I got older, I started to get more and more interested and involved with computing. And so then when I was in college, I was at Middle Tennessee State University. There was no drone program here in the state of Georgia at the time. I found that there was really a future in aviation, not manned aviation, but unmanned aviation. And so kind of taking my passion for computing and background of aviation, I started iVue essentially to create the future of drones, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. And so really we have two different business models or revenue streams at iVue. So I wanted to get into the business making our own drone hardware and software. I'm not a hardware or software guy, so I realized I needed to build a team. I went to school with a couple of students through middle school and high school that I thought would be a good fit, where I could essentially go out with an off-the-shelf drone, get drone service work. Then I have a business partner that's a video production and media production professional. He could do like the ground-based photo and video work and any editing that's required. And then lastly, I had a friend that was going to school for electrical engineering, and he was taking math, finance, accounting classes. And so it quickly turned into a business of I would go out and get the work, Brian, the media guy, would do the work, and then Gerardo would account for the work. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what that entails. But again, starting out, most of our jobs were just media production jobs. Most of them would use drones, but drones were not, and still are not, a requirement. And that's something I want everyone to think about today. This isn't just one industry, right? It's like there's, yes, a computer industry, but computers are used in any and every industry, right? And so drones are the same thing, especially the way that we look at them as flying computers, right? But without having our own flying computer that we brought to the market when we started out, we were just using off-the-shelf, essentially flying cameras to help us out on our job sites. So we started building a platform so we could connect essentially freelance photographers, videographers, and drone pilots to businesses that need some sort of media content, and kind of in like an Uber gig economy type of fashion, right? Where we don't need to supply the photographers or videographers or drone pilots with the equipment. They already have it, they already have the expertise or experience knowing how to use it, and we're just connecting them to the job. The customer knows exactly what they're ordering. We have created like a menu system, so it's not, we're just connecting the drone pilot to the company, and then they have to figure out what the deliverable is going to be, what the cost is going to be. We're taking care of all that up front. So again, helps the content creator know exactly what they need to capture, and then the customer knows exactly what they're getting. And that led us to wanting to create our own drones, right? That can not just be used for photography and videography missions, but mapping missions, or seed deployment missions, or cargo delivery missions, or wireless communication missions, and have essentially what the smartphone did to the point-and-shoot camera market, or the cell phone market. And so we're creating a modular drone, or we've created a modular drone, our first product in the market, Develop Air, where it really is more so of a learning and development platform at this time, where we want to teach students not just how to use drones for many different applications, but build drones and build hardware and software for those drones, for these new applications, beyond just taking photos and videos with them. So again, we brought Develop Air to the market actually back in late 2021. predominantly selling them to schools right now or organizations that are hosting like STEM summer camps for students. But recently, we actually just delivered a couple of these Develop Air with tether systems to the city of Chicago because they're able to modify them to be equipped with this tether bracket, connect it to that tether system while also running a gimbal camera on it, where that's not really possible with a lot of off-the-shelf drones like a DJI Phantom or a DJI Mavic. Only when you get into like the larger, more expensive enterprise drones, you get any sort of flexibility beyond just a basic camera. And beyond the basic camera, one of the things that we realize in creating a flying computer drone, and specifically we look at Develop Air, kind of like the Raspberry Pi of the drone world. And out of curiosity, who's familiar with a Raspberry Pi? And I'm not talking the food. Okay, so for those that are not familiar, it's essentially just a miniature computer. So this little board is a version of a Raspberry Pi, and we're using it with a 4G LTE module. So now instead of just controlling your drone or viewing the video feed over a mile or 2 mile range, all within visual line of sight, of course, to do it legally, you need a beyond visual line of sight waiver, but you can now operate your drone from anywhere around the world via the internet and be able to get the video feed or control any payload attached to it. And I mentioned the Raspberry Pi analogy because many people, they'll buy a Raspberry Pi and they'll have no idea what to do with it, right? On the other hand, if you're an experienced developer, you know exactly what you want to do with it and what's possible to do with it. So we've created these mod kits for Develop Air so you can understand not just what you can do with a drone beyond take photos and videos, but kind of reverse engineer it, so to speak, and give you inspiration to create projects of your own. So this is one that we actually had students create. Very simple, just a mounting bracket for a claw to be able to pick up and drop objects, right? Now the students that created this are actually working to modify it to have it on a winch system so you can lower the claw, right? And do it from the sky and not have to come down to the ground. Another project that we had students build over a hackathon competition was using this climate sensor. They're able to create a 3D print to mount the climate sensor, and then using a Raspberry Pi, take weather data, transmit that to the Raspberry Pi being provided power through Develop Air via one of these plates, and then they were able to take that information and plot it on a map where the weather data was collected, right? And so now you can look at a drone not as a flying camera, but in this instance, as a flying weather station, right? And then of course we do have like the gimbal cameras that you would typically expect from a drone. So of course, like a smartphone, while it can do other applications, people still want to use them to take photos and videos. And we think that's going to be the case in the drone world, where now you're always going to have a camera, but that's just going to be one part of the equation and not the whole solution like it is today. And then some fairly simple projects that we've actually built in-house are a spotlight, so you can provide a light, light for the surrounding area or operating perimeter. Predominantly for like search and rescue applications. Again, this is more of like a proof of concept. We do have a floodlight in the works, so you can actually operate with the tether system and light up a whole block, for an instance. So you can have one Develop Air on a tether providing an eye in the sky, and then the other one lighting up the sky around it. And then this is a little dispenser that we built, actually predominantly to deploy fish food. One of our engineers, aunt and uncle, had a koi fish pond, and we thought it'd be cool, kind of like those Raspberry Pi projects where people build automatic dog food dispensers. We could build an automatic fish food dispensing system for their koi pond. And it ended up not working out to where we could deploy the fish food at their koi pond because they have a net over it, and there's a bunch of like birds of prey that always try to eat the koi fish. So we actually just took this out to a local lake and essentially went fishing with Develop Air. And so we baited the fish. We actually, a fisherman saw that video that we posted, And then he was like, what if I can cast my line with your drone as well? So we were able to bait the fish, cast the line, and then I make the joke, I'll show the video. We actually hear that, cover your ears. And so I will definitely not show that video when Jim leaves the, no. But I like to say we can do everything with one drone, from baiting the fish, catching the fish, to then cooking the fish, right? Kidding, hopefully no one's from PETA in here. And then kind of beyond these mod kits, one other key point about DevelopAir being flexible to equip it as required for each mission is the way that you can control it, right? Most people have probably seen a controller like this for like standard RC cars, planes, helicopters. You can use one of these to fly DevelopAir. You've probably seen something like this with like your DJI or Autel drone. You can get nice video screen controllers like this as well. Definitely a little bit more expensive, but it is an option. But one thing we found, especially working with schools and working with students to learn how to operate, build, and repair drones, is every student is familiar with one of these, right? And so we've made it a key point to make DevelopAir compatible with your favorite PlayStation, Xbox, any gaming controller, right? And then my favorite way to fly DevelopAir is with no controller at all, just using a laptop, tablet, or phone, and you can actually set waypoints for where you want it to fly. Now, I do always recommend having a controller connected as backup, but again, theoretically, you don't even need a controller at all. And so, DevelopAir is where we're starting now. Again, kind of working down this road of building modular drones, not just for taking photos and videos, but for any and every industry, and eventually even consumers, right? Everyone here has probably heard about Amazon, FedEx, UPS, all these logistics companies building drone delivery fleets, right? There's a couple of problems with that. The first one that many of these companies have already overcome are beyond visual line of sight waivers, right? But what they have not been able to overcome is they can only have one person monitor up to 8 drones at a time in like a command and control center. So if you think about the tens of millions of drones that we have, or the tens of millions of people on Amazon ordering packages, right? You're going to have millions, at the very least hundreds of thousands of people that are just monitoring drone operations. Where I think makes more sense is selling a drone to every consumer, every business, and you have your drone that you send out to the local fulfillment center, to the local Starbucks or McDonald's, or wherever you have goods that you need to pick up, right? And so that's what we're working towards. It's not just a drone for imagery, not just a drone for recreation or warfare, but drones for anyone and everyone, right? Now, I don't think DevelopAir is that drone, right? Kind of like the first personal computers. Theoretically, were accessible to everyone. They just weren't really easy enough to use for everyone, right? So that's why we're creating Omnibot Air, and actually 2 different versions. One that can carry up to 6 pounds, one that can carry up to 12 pounds. And where DevelopAir, you have these payload brackets where you can slide on your payload. Then you actually have to figure out what power or data connector that you want to use to provide power or data connectivity to your payload. So this is getting a little bit technical here, but I look at what we have with DevelopAir, like trying to figure out what connector you need to use on your laptop, and then what cable you need to use to connect it to a TV system, right? Pretty much everyone in this room could probably figure that out, but I know, like my mom, that's just like way too technical, right? But anyone can plug in like a USB drive into a computer, a USB webcam, right? It's all providing power and data in that one smooth interaction, that one connection, right? So we're doing the same thing with Omnibot Air, where you can plug in a parachute, an extra battery, a camera, a processor, a speaker, a cargo deployment mechanism, a spraying device, anything and everything, right? We don't necessarily have to create them. And I've used the smartphone analogy, right? So we can allow third-party developers to create modules for our drones without them having to create a drone and be able to get into the drone industry. Just like developers can create apps for phones, get into the phone industry without having to create their own phone. And so all of this is a lot to take on, but it's not just myself. I'm lucky enough to have a great team supporting us, not just building our products like DevelopAir, but selling them as well. We have some hardware guys, software guys, media and service guys, and then I'm really just the one that goes and talks about all the great things that we're doing. And then beyond our great team, we also have some advisors that we've been able to bring on board, including Jeff, who's out here supporting us today. And then we've also been lucky enough to bring in some local investors around Georgia. Chatari Pava, he was actually a local real estate investor, and he helped us get DevelopAir to market, investing $100,000 into our company. And then just recently, this past December, Chris Klaus, if any of you guys are Georgia Tech alumni or familiar with the Georgia Tech campus, he's a big backer of Georgia Tech. Actually sold the company himself back in 2006 to IBM for, I think, like $2 billion. So now he's a very prominent investor around here. And then he's helped us actually build up our first production run of DevelopAir and help us kind of expand our market reach. And so this is just a look at kind of the opportunity and a deeper dive into our business model. So we essentially have two brands underneath iVue. We have iVue Media, which is essentially a service arm, not just drones as a service, but using drones as a service within the media production environment, right? And then we have iVueRobotics, which is actually making our drone hardware. And so further down the road, we want our content creators that are going out and doing media jobs using our hardware, right? And then if the customer that's paying us to provide a service through iVue Media wants to start building their media production operations or drone operations in-house, they can also buy our hardware. So the idea is any way that you have drone operations or media production operations, you can hire us as a service, or you can buy the hardware from us to do it in-house yourself. And so this is what we're doing right now, again, providing media services and selling drone hardware. One of the problems to make drones easy to use for anyone and everyone is creating our own drone software, right? So DevelopAir, I'll show you, uses an open source software. And out of curiosity, who's here familiar with Linux, the operating system, by a show of hands? Okay, so Linux, I assume everyone's familiar with Windows and Mac OS, right? Windows can pretty much work on any computer, and it's designed to be easy to use software for any computer, right? Mac, you're only getting Mac on a Mac computer, but some would argue it's the easiest to use software because it's only made for those set of computers, right? Linux is only for really developers. There's a reason why no one uses Linux as their daily operating system. And Linux, the Linux Foundation, actually makes the open source drone software that DevelopAir uses. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility to control different types of payloads with your drone. But again, it's just not user-friendly. So we're building our own software we call World's iVue, not just to be able to control our drone, but also around the world map, be able to see where there's drone jobs available if you're a service provider. And so, skipping forward a little bit, this is actually an early look at what that looks like. So, you'll be able to view your video feeds for all your drones connected over the network, be able to see their location on the map, and then also be able to see content and jobs all across the map as well. So, just kind of ending it before I go into some demo of the software, and then we can go out and fly. This is our roadmap for the future. While we're starting in aerial drones right now, I actually wanted to start off with like ground-based drones, realize that the market's not quite there for kind of drones in your home and office just yet. Boston Dynamics is kind of leading the charge there, getting there. But to make the world more accessible with drones, we obviously need more than flying drones to collect information and cargo. We need to do the same for the land and sea, eventually make our own kind of all-terrain drones that can go between land, air, and sea. And then one of my internal metrics to success is if I'm not showing up to work in a passenger drone that we create in the next 15, maybe 20 years, I've probably done something wrong along the way. And that's, kind of putting it nicely. So my contact information is here on any of these screens. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. If you ever want to come up to our office in Cumming, it's a little bit out in the boonies, but I'll be more than happy to give anyone here a tour. There's also a local drone park up there. Should you ever want to get more hands-on with DevelopAir or anything else that we have, be more than happy to do that with you as well. So I'll leave that contact information up there for just a moment more. And then you can also connect with us online via these two QR codes. Check out our website. And then we also have a Discord server. Typically this Discord server is for a younger audience, but you guys may surprise me. Some of you have a Discord. All right. Before I get into showing off like some of the examples of our content and drone hardware, yeah, just kind of.
You mentioned earlier that your drones do not have any controller. You can control via your computer. I'd like for the FAA guy over here to tell us what happens when you lose connection with that. How do you take manual control over that drone to land it safely if you don't have manual control over the item that's in the sky?
Yeah, so if your computer loses connection, I'll show, there's automatic return to landing options. So if you lose connection, it'll come back to return to landing. Now, of course, if there's like trees or obstacles in the way, you better hope that your return to landing altitude is set high enough.
But you don't have a manual way to control that bird.
If that's all you have is just your computer, and that's why I do recommend that you always have a controller plugged into your computer just as a backup. But theoretically, you don't need one. Any other questions at this time? All right, so I did talk a little bit about some of our services, and want to give you guys an idea of what that is, especially I've talked to some people here in the audience about photogrammetry. So for those not familiar with photogrammetry, photos that have GPS information saved in the metadata and stitching them together into a map or 3D model of a real-world object or location. So drone photogrammetry is taking a camera, flying over a site like this windy site, and then creating a 3D model of the location. So we actually did this work for a solar company, and this is actually the Wendy's where all the TV commercials are shot. And they got a contract with Wendy's to install a solar system at the site, and Wendy's wanted to see what the site would look like before any permits are pulled, before any construction is done. So we sent out a drone pilot to the site in California. They mapped it out, capturing somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 to 1,200 photos. We stitched those photos together in that 3D model. And then those solar panels, we actually used other 3D software to create those solar panels and then bring them into that model. So again, the solar company was able to use this essentially as sales material to get the contract with Wendy's, and then Wendy's was able to see what their site would look like before any actual construction or permits were pulled. And so we take the same concept of like sending out a drone pilot for this site to events that need photo and video production work, live streaming, real estate agents that need photos and videos to market their listings. But really our kind of core market providing services is for real estate, construction, and events, or any location-based media at this time. And then some of what I talked about with DevelopAir, we're really focused on getting DevelopAir into the hands of as many students and developers as possible, because they're the ones creating the future of the drone industry, right? We can't create every new piece of hardware and software for our drones, right? In the same way like Apple or Google, they didn't create every app in the App Store, right? So I see it as paramount that we need the next generation of developers, engineers, and technicians getting familiar with drones as a flying computer, not just a flying camera, that they're learning the basic operations and rules and regulations of, right? We need not just operators, but the technical people as well. So we're actually this summer doing some camps with the University of Texas, Dallas. We did some summer camps like this here locally with an organization called Clubside Kids last year, and it really just allowed them to get hands-on repairing DevelopAir, flying DevelopAir, creating new software and payloads or attachments for DevelopAir. And so we think that they can kind of be our module developers for Omnibot Air in the same way that smartphones have app developers. I can show some of that content as well, but I think the most exciting content most people like to see is the flamethrower. So let me pull that up. The most safe testing environment in suburban Atlanta. And so this was with no GPS, just manual flight control. And then this was actually with our standard model of Develop Air that's only meant to carry a 3-pound payload, and that was more than 3 pounds. So we just kind of did this more so for marketing and fun, so to speak. We're not actually looking to sell flamethrower as a product. Apparently the FAA has a problem with that, where the ATF, who regulates like weapons and explosives and tobacco, they do not count flamethrowers as weapons, but apparently when you attach one to a drone, it's a weapon in the FAA's eyes. So we've kind of skirted on the side of caution, not sold it. Jim, you did not hear this, but I think legally or technically speaking, we could sell the flamethrower separately, and if you attach it to Develop Air, that's on you, right? But again, Jim did not hear that.
Speak a little louder.
What? So yeah, we are also all about safety, right? All in the sake of innovation. But without any further ado, unless there's any questions or anyone would like to see any other content, I'll give you guys a look at the software that we use to control Develop Air and some of the payloads, and then we can go set up a flight operation.
That's the question.
Yes.
What's the purpose of flamethrower?
So,
Surface or something?
yeah, there are actual like crop burning and like controlled crop and forestry burning applications. I've also seen like clearing remote wasp nests or clearing out power lines that have debris on them. Where I see actually the biggest commercial application are drone light shows that you guys have probably seen, where there's drones that will like maybe make a shape of a fire-breathing dragon, and instead of having the lights make the shape of the flame, actually have a couple of drones with the flamethrower making the flame. So again, we're not really selling it to that market right now, but we also think even like the YouTubers that make, you know, videos to just get a lot of views and advertising dollars, I think they would be more than happy to spend, you know, a few $1,000s on a flying flamethrower just to make